Can't imagine many flirts would want to challenge Bob from Gently's channel. Oh, you would be surprised. They like to do it all the time. I've got one right now, p-brane, that is just driving me absolutely insane. I put this image of Mount Rainier up. Now, most people that would look at this photograph would realize that in order for the mountain to cast that shadow on the clouds above it, the sun had to be coming from an angle or an altitude lower than the peak of the mountain. That's what they call me.
Hey everybody, p-brane here. I hope everybody's doing all right. I know we're under a crazy time right now in this world with this psyop pandemic. I thought I would do a video on this Bob, the science guy, and so he put this video out about 9 months ago. I must have missed it when he put it out, and so it's about 20 minutes long, and my interjecting into it took me about an hour and a half. So I was like, uh-oh. Okay, so I broke it into 3 parts. You know, it's like there's so much good stuff, I didn't want to cut too much of it out. So that's why it took me a long time. Also, one more thing, there's some creaking sounds. You hear some clicking and stuff. It's this headset that I got. And anyway, I just wanted to say that. So let's go on. Again, he accused me a while back of some trickery and stuff. At the end of my video, on the mountain shadows, I showed how I could catch a shadow from a higher light source. So I was in my bedroom and I was sitting on the floor, and I had my mountain and my cloud out of cardboard, and I'm catching a shadow from a light that's 7 feet off the ground, my bathroom light. And oh, he cried, fake, blah, 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 blah. And I knew, I put it in at the end of my video, and I knew it would troll him a bit, and any ball earther. I knew they would go crazy. But anyway, so yeah, he went crazy. But he's blocked me from his channel for over a year now. So I can't respond to him, and that's why I started making videos on him in the first place. I started doing comments and stuff. He didn't like my comments, so he blocked me. He put out another video. It's like the 3rd time he's mentioned this. One time he put one out to the guys from Globebusters, you gotta police your community, and you've got these charlatans out there, blah, 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 blah. And he did this big dramatic thing about it. And so, being that he just put out another video, and I'm pretty caught up in all this pandemic nonsense, so I haven't really been into Flat Earth that much at the moment. But seeing that this video came out, I was finally like, okay, I'm going to respond. So he put this video out, and he's got his buddies, his minions, Common Sense something, and Sean Hawkins weighing in here. He used them, and so I thought I would play his video. It's 20 minutes and 20 seconds, and so I thought I would play it and interject as we go and see how it goes. But before we get into it, let me just show you my t-shirts. This is my classic p-brane perspective premium tee, and it's large, and it's called Heavy Metal. Here's my Flat Earth t-shirt, 3D, very Marvel Comics, very cool. Here's Flat Earth, like 3D art popping off the page, very cool. And the watermark is only here for showing the photos. It's not in the t-shirts. All right, let's go on. Cool Flat Earth, I love that shirt. Relax, it's just another globalist hoax. And here's an interesting Trump 2020. I have all kinds of symbolism going on here. Right? We have the dome in the firmament. We've got 17 stars. Some of you know what that is. We have the sun and the moon. And we have a rocket being denied. Much like this rocket. Look at this thing. Denied. And some people think that's actually going into space. No, my space cadet friends, that's going into the ground. Oh, it's following the curvature, p-brane. No, it's not following the curvature. See these jet trails? Those are straight. See that? They're high altitude planes going level with the ground. They're not curving. This is a curve downward going nowhere, okay? And here's some MSNPC. I love this shirt. Again, watermark will not be there, but that's a very cool. Plandemic Dem Panic. Ooh, yeah, it is. Here's one, Pandemic Dem Panic, with a little panic in the middle. Love that shirt. Super cool. And here's the NPC guy that I used for Bob. NPC with the mask, aren't they though? And finally, this Perspective Mountain Shadow t-shirt. Ball killer. Totally. Ooh, and I almost forgot my Star Trail t-shirt. Check this out. The Earth does not move. With a few scripture verses added at the bottom. Nice. Okay, let's get back to the program. All right.
Well, hi everyone, and greetings from Northern Michigan. This is Bob the Science Guy, and I've got some exciting news for the channel. You know, for the last year or so, I have really been pretty heavily into the flat Earth. However, the honest-to-God truth is I'm running out of things to debunk. There are no new arguments in the flat Earth, and the only people that seem to still be in it...
Oh, look at this lie right there. That seem to still be in it. This propagandist right here trying to make it sound like flat earthers are dropping out. They're dropping out of the movement.
...are those that are willfully ignorant and those that exploit the willfully ignorant.
Okay, Bob, no new arguments? Why don't you take on the one that I talked about a couple videos back? And I did a whole series on the equatorial bulge. And the argument is this. If the Earth were really spinning and the poles are flattening many miles, right? Squashing, the Earth is squashing, and the equator is bulging 14 miles high, and that's a radius, and that's dirt and rock and everything solid bulging out. Why isn't the water, Bob, the most easily moved, why isn't the bulge made up predominantly of all the Earth's oceans? Why wouldn't that spin to the equator, Bob, and be bulging up the equator? How could we see scenes like this with water on lakes and the ocean like glass, Bob? We can't. It's impossible on your spinning ball. And don't say, oh, this is when the Earth was created, p-brane. Well, actually, your model says that the Earth used to spin faster and the bulge was bigger. It was like one rotation in 20 hours. Now it's one rotation in 24, and it says the Earth has slowed and so has the size of the bulge. So the current rotation is sustaining the bulge, Bob. Nice try. But anyway, you want a new argument. You never dealt with that one. And explain that one, okay? And don't leave this parts out with me talking like you like to do, and just go ahead and straw man.
So I'm going to kind of move on to a little bit of a different direction. Now I'm going to come back and touch on flat Earth once in a while, especially if they come up with something new. But I'm not really hopeful that they're going to. But occasionally I may still visit it again just for old time's sake.
For old time's sake. Bob, I gave you another one, and we're going to address this at the end of the video, so stay tuned on this one. I gave you the challenge, not you. I said pilots, and I mentioned you, and I mentioned Wolfie, and I said any pilot out there. Actually, I made a challenge to all pilots, and I happened to mention him and Wolfie, and being the narcissist that he is, he made it all about himself. Go to the North Pole and fly to the equator fixed on a star. Now everybody's going to see how you completely diverted, right? You completely diverted to a whole different argument and explaining how airplanes navigate over the ground. So take that one on, but honestly this time, and deal with what I said. But you're not going to do it because that proves the Earth's not rotating. But we'll get to that at the end of the video. Let's go.
But I'm moving on to something new and different. Let me tell you a little bit about it. You know, one of my habits is that I tend to look outside my car when I drive.
One of my habits is that I tend to look out my car window when I drive. Who talks like this? Of course, Bob. Who wouldn't look out their window when you drive? Okay. This is what happens when you script yourself and you think you're writing stuff that's clever and everything. Okay, let's go.
And every now and then you see things that are just fascinating, that tell us so much about the Earth that so many people seem to overlook. I thought I'd point a few of them out.
Okay.
For example, this photograph right here I took driving home the other day. Notice that the sun is setting in the west, and the high altitude clouds are lit up orange. But the lower clouds are dark gray. They're not in direct sunlight.
Okay.
What's this tell us? It tells us the surface of the Earth is curved.
Okay. Well, no, and I'll explain that in a second too. A curved surface would have a real problem lighting the underside of the clouds, especially if there's a lot of clouds and they extend for a long distance toward the sun. I'll explain in a second. But no, what you have, Bob, is when the sun goes away, due to perspective, it lowers. So your viewing angle to the sun keeps getting lower and lower. And like, let's say it's vertical when it's overhead. As it goes away, it keeps getting more and more to the horizontal, right? So you have many things in between. Like even you're looking out at that horizon, right? Out at the sunset. You've got a hill there, you've got trees, you've got houses, you've got elevation changes, you've got mountains. All of this compresses and potentially blocks the sun. So what you have here is you have the thinner clouds and the red spectrum of light, because the sun is low in the horizon, is cutting through those clouds and causing them to be yellow and gold and orange. And these lower clouds are being blocked by things like I just mentioned, elevation changes, mountains, hills, houses, buildings, forests, you name it, okay? So to say that it's the curve, I'm going to show you in a second that it cannot be the curve, all right? Let's go on.
And the sun is going below the horizon and shining upward onto those clouds, but leaving the lower ones in darkness. I'm going to be taking a flight from Detroit to Salt Lake City and down to Phoenix. That's an east-west flight. It's a good time to pull out my precision scales and maybe measure the Ophos effect. I'll bring a bag of candy for the flight attendants, and maybe they'll let me plug it in the back.
I'll bring a bag of candy for the flight attendants. Again, who talks like this?
So we'll see. Well, before I continue with my series on medical marijuana, there's a couple of loose ends I wanted.
Bag of candy. Now I get it.
One of which is a YouTube creator by the name of p-brane keeps challenging me to
Oh, did you see that? Did you see him pretend like he had to search his memory bank for my name?
One of which is a YouTube creator by the name of p-brane keeps challenging me to...
When this is what he was said in a live thing.
Can't imagine many flirts would want to challenge Bob from Gently's channel. Oh, you would be surprised. They like to do it all the time. I've got one right now, p-brane, that is just driving me absolutely insane.
Grip, man. Put the hammer down.
There's a couple of loose ends I wanted to tie up. One of which is a YouTube creator by the name of p-brane keeps challenging me to silly challenges.
How dare you?
Now, we went back and forth over some shadow images on Mount Rainier. He attempted to change the location of the clouds from above the mountain to below the peak.
Oh, I attempted to change from a lie to the truth. That's right, Bob.
And, basically I just quit bothering with him. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't going...
Even though you've still had, you just put out a video again saying, oh, he's fraud. Him and Phuket Word and Rob Skibba, fraudsters.
To address it any further. But another creator by the name of Common Sense Criticism contacted me and said, look, I've done a response video to his latest video against you. Would you like to have a look at it? Mm-hmm. Well, I did, and I thought it was pretty decent, and I thought I'd share that with you guys. And then at the end, I'll probably address his latest little challenge about airplane flights and get that dismissed in about 30 seconds. So let's cue up the music.
Now, there's an exaggeration, too. He says he's going to dismiss it in about 30 seconds. He actually takes about 6 minutes or so. But, Bob, and at the end, also, I'm going to show you where he lied about me. And he accuses me of doing some kind of forgery or fake stuff, accusing me of dishonesty when he's the one. I'll show you. Let's continue.
And have a look at Common Sense Criticism.
So in the image of the mountain, the clouds are obviously above
this guy. He's got a point to Bob. Yeah, I think we get who Bob is.
The mountain. I mean, is there really any question? It's obviously above the mountain. I mean, you can see light between the top of the mountain and the clouds.
So he says there's a gap between the mountain and the shadow. Now, you see this? This is all clouds too. They're blown out by the sun. See this? The light portions, that's more blown out. Okay, I got a whole lot to say about this. The top of the mountain, when we zoom in, is a little fuzzy up here because it's actually in the clouds. But you're not seeing that it's in the clouds because of the angle that we're looking at the mountain. If you were looking at the clouds more on your eye line, they're going to be thick, right? It's like an accumulation of clouds and you can't see through them. The thicker the clouds, the more dense the clouds, and the more of them, an actual taking up more area, and not referring to just, whether how much water, moisture they have in them, but actually bigger, taking up more area, they will tend to accumulate and block your view and can block the sun. But the thinner, wispier, and the less area they're taking up, the light can go through them. Okay, so like right here, you see the angle that the clouds are going up? You're not seeing much cloud in front of the mountain, are you? Even if the mountain were in the clouds, because of the angle. Let me show you a side view of this perspective view, just so you can see what I'm talking about. And Bob, I know this is going to throw you for a loop. You guys don't understand this. This is just a conceptual image from the side of what this front image might look like. It's not actually, the sky is not actually going up, Bob. All right. So from the side, you can see, here's my observer. The observer's looking up, and you're only going to catch a little bit of clouds, even if the top of the mountain is in the clouds, depending on how thick they are. But you're only getting a little bit, a little sliver, or a short layer of clouds in front. And if the sun is blasting through, it makes them translucent, turns them white, turns them bright yellow. Now, okay, and if you don't believe that, then look at this. Okay, let's say that these clouds right here, this is the mountain, and these are the clouds above the mountain, okay? All right, we can agree that these clouds, right, are in front of the sun, that the sun is blowing them out. So if this is the top of the mountain, and this would represent the clouds, just like in this picture, right? Then you see as the sun moves through, you're not going to say the sun is actually in amongst the clouds, are you? You're not going to say those clouds are behind the sun. No, of course not, right? The sun is behind all of these clouds. But because it's blowing out these clouds, this is all cloud, right? It's making it look like there's no clouds. That's the same that we get here with this mountain, right? Here's your mountain, too dark and dense for the, too thick for the sun to penetrate. These clouds right here, too thick for the sun to penetrate. These clouds, thin, and the sun is ripping right through them and penetrating them. Okay, so and if we make the analogy of the mountain, like I said, this is the mountain, this is the cloud above. This is highly zoomed in, but this you would say, oh, there's the gap between the mountain and the clouds. p-brane, there's a gap. Well, it's not a gap, is it? Okay, so that's all it is. It's not a gap, and this sun is actually back behind all these clouds, because you can see the dark spots show up on the cloud as a kind of a more yellow and a little bit dark. It can't quite blow through that. Same as why the sun can't blow through the mountain, right? It's more dense. So all that's happening here is that the thin cloud layer that the mountain is sticking up in is being blown out. That's all. Because you can see it's hazy, it's blurry up by the top of the mountain. Look at the edges that's on the sides. The edges on the side are not as blurry right there. Okay? So that's in the clouds. And as I showed you with this little diagram from this perspective. And I did this with a cardboard. You can see that from this angle it looks like the clouds are higher than the mountain. But when you rise up, the top of the mountain is in the clouds. All right?
Keep that fact in mind, as it will prove to be important the further we get into p-brane's argument. The sun at sunset is shining its light from beneath the clouds.
Okay, now he just said not to scale, obviously. But this cloud is not just not to scale. It's really, it's kind of to scale, but it's not curved. Now, they claim that the underside of the clouds are lit. Now, if the clouds wrap around the ball like this, right, as they're claiming, how is the sun shining underneath them? Unless, of course you can say, well, the clouds just happen to start here somewhere, right? But that's not what we see. We see the clouds extend way back and go all the way to the horizon. Now, Bob, in a video, maybe he says it in this one, says that that's curvature. That the clouds appearing to go to the horizon is curvature.
And as the Earth curves, the clouds curve with it. And that's why you see the clouds on the ground.
So, well, then take a look at these light poles or these power lines. Is that curvature? They're going to the horizon too. Now, I want to bring this up at the point. Let me just cut into this part with the mountain shadow where Bob says this, that clearly the sun is lower than the mountain and it's casting a shadow upward. Now, this is his religious belief. Now, when it comes to light poles, we could look at those light poles, and if you didn't know better, you might say, let's say you come from another universe and you come, another dimension, you come in to Earth and you've never seen power lines, you might have an argument and say, oh, look at these power lines get smaller. They put in smaller power lines. And I say, no, that's just perspective. Now, how are we going to definitively get to the truth? We have to go out to that small power line or that pole, and once we get out there, we'll see that it is in fact the same size as the one we were standing under. And then as we look back to where we were, we see, oh, the power lines are, or the light poles are getting smaller again. So clearly it's a perspective issue. But now when it comes to the sun, he immediately does why he's Bob the fallacy guy. He says, look, the sun is lower than the mountain. Well, that would be looking at these light poles and coming to the same conclusion. But we know better. But this one, he thinks he knows better. But really, the only way to definitively figure out what this is to go to the mountaintop, right? And from the mountaintop, now you can see what the shadow is doing. And the shadow, as I've shown in other videos, my whole mountain series was to show it's always on top of the clouds. The first shadow of the day at sunrise and the last shadow at sunset is on top of the clouds. And funny thing, Bob, that sun that you're declaring is lower than the mountain. When you go up to the mountain, look at all the mountain climbers. Where's the sun? It's eye level with them. What happens if you take a helicopter from the top of the mountain and go up 100 yards? Guess what the sun does, and the horizon? It rises with you, Bob. So for you to sit here and declare, saying you're this perspective expert, and you declared that the sun is lower, is completely stupid. I mean, that's amateur hour, Bob, for Mr. O Master of the perspective realm. So anyway, and remember, my challenge to you still stands. Show me one photo from the peak of the mountain where the shadow is cast on clouds above the peak of the mountain, where every mountain climber has a phone. Every phone has cameras in it. They've taken hundreds of pictures of this big triangular shadow on top of the clouds that are below the summit, but not a one of this, with that big triangular shadow cast on the underside of the clouds above the summit. Remember, I put you on top of the mountain here, and this is what the shadow would look like. Not one picture like that. That's curious, isn't it? Okay, so let's go on to this again. Remember, if the clouds were curved, how would the sunlight get up under those clouds, right? Okay, let's go on.
Due to the angle of the light coming from the sun. On a flat Earth, if the sun was only 3,000 miles high...
Straw man, we don't know how high the sun is. Okay, and besides not knowing how high the sun is, I'm going to invoke my religious views here for a second. The Bible says that the sun, moon, and stars are within the firmament. Okay? And Job describes it as strong and as a molten looking glass. Okay, so there's no telling how that affects the optics.
Earth, if the sun was only 3,000 miles high
Okay, straw man.
and never sets,
It does
just
set.
goes away, the sun would never shine light from underneath the clouds. Therefore, the shadow would never look like this.
The sun, it actually does lower visually, right? As I show here, I take my sun here, and here I am. I'll get into this more on the light in the bathroom, but as the light moves away, the angle to it drops. Okay, and I showed in other videos that there is a reflection involved. Here's the sun setting, time lapse, and you can see anytime you take a photo. Here's a photo I took from friend's backyard, and the hot spot on the clouds is always between you and the sun. So you know that's a reflection because someone from a different angle won't see your hot spot. They're going to see their own between them and the sun. Another thing, just to prove that too, go out to any body of water, and whether it's moonlight or sunlight, you're going to have a trail between you and the sun or moon, and someone else standing next to you is going to see a trail between them, and all the water is going to be lit up brightly. But you are not going to see their lit up water, and they're not going to see yours because it's a reflection. Just like looking in a mirror. It's not a real thing, the reflection in the mirror. It's just for the observer. Okay, so you have a combination here of some reflection, which is going to be between the camera and the sun, or the person and the sun, and that the thinner clouds are a little more penetrated by the sun's light, and so they light up. And being that it's at sunset, you have the red light spectrum, or hues, whatever you want to call it, cutting through the clouds. So that's all that's going on there. So the sun is always above the clouds, even if it looks like it's shining underneath the clouds or lighting the bottom. This is just illusion. Okay? Because if you went up above the clouds, it would be the top of the clouds that are lit. Let's go up. The sun rises with us because the sun's on the horizon, and the horizon always stays level with your eyes. So the clouds now are going to start going down and get lower and lower below you, right? So now from your perspective, as you look, the tops of the clouds are lit up. And if you could see the bottoms of the clouds, they would not be lit up. Same as when you were on the ground. When you were on the ground, you saw the bottoms of the clouds lit, but the tops wouldn't be lit. And it's all just a reflection because it just changed your perspective, and it changes. It's all perspective. Okay, let's go on.
Therefore, the shadow would never look like this. P-brane shows exactly what I'm talking about later in the video, and he's too stupid to notice. Shocker.
You see how these guys talk? I mean, professing to be wise, they became fools. You know what that means in today's modern language? Professing to be smart, you become stupid. Keep that in mind with these ball earthers that all think they're smart and call everybody else dumb and stupid. I'm not calling them that. I'm just telling you what Scripture says, and I believe that. That's 100% true. These guys are dumb. Let's go on.
Someone that self-applies p-brane doesn't understand something.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not proclaiming to be smart like some genius. I use p-brane as a humble, and maybe the converse. Maybe it's conversely true to say, professing to be humble, dumb, you become smart. I know that's true in my life. I had a lyric in a song once that said, some people learn their whole lives through. Others so smart won't learn nothing new. For proof of a spinning orbiting ball, and he also uses it in a video saying that we flat earthers have dyscalculia, some made up nonsense, because we don't automatically jump to the conclusion that yes, the sun is lower than the mountain peak and casting a shadow up on the clouds above. Actually, he left out of the definition. The definition, this is from Bob's show when he had this goofball therapist on there, and it also says you have problem with spatial relationships. Now that's clearly Bob. He doesn't understand when things are farther from you, they can appear on the ground. but they're not on the ground, Bob. The sun's not on the ground. It just appears that way. The shadow's not getting wider or pointing upward like you've claimed. And that's another, I have so much on this guy, Bob, so much. I mean, he claims that, and we'll get into this when Sean Hawkins shows his presentation coming up. This is going to be a long video. I don't do long videos, but I'm hoping you guys enjoy it. Get your, I hope you got your popcorn and you're just relaxing, and you can come back to the video, come back and pick up where you left off. But anyway, it's packed with stuff. Bob actually said that the shadow's getting wider. It's actually pointing upward, and the sun is actually lower than the peak of the mountain. All three of those are wrong. You can't be more wrong.
And the narrow part of the shadow is at the peak of the mountain, and then it widens out. Now, just to show it's not an optical illusion due to perspective or whatever they're trying to claim, here's a side view. The shadow starts small, and it gets bigger. The sun is below the peak of the mountain, the clouds are above the peak of the mountain, and the shadow is being cast upward onto the cloud base.
Nope. As I showed you in previous videos, Bob, the first shadow in the morning and the last shadow of the day is always on top of the clouds from the perspective of mountain climbers. They're there at sunrise and they're there at sunset, and that's the shadow we see right here. That's it. All right, let's go on. Well, because no, flat earthers have been exposed to perspective and educated to how perspective works. And most importantly, flat earthers are thinkers. That's right. You have to be, because you can't run out to the local library and get a book on flat earth and regurgitate it like you guys do. Now this idiot's going to say something stupid. But so it's like why I got into the doing flat earth videos in the first place. Once I understood how the sun sets, because that was my hang up. How does the sun rise and set then if it's just moving parallel to the ground over the earth? And once I understood that, and I thought, well, I'm going to explain it to people because I explain things so I can, I'll explain it so I could understand it. And I also like to make graphics. I used to be in sales at one point in my life, and one thing I learned that always stuck with me was you never tell them what you can show them. So I always try to back up my stuff with graphics and illustrations.
No, you get all your science from other flat earthers on YouTube.
Yeah, other flat earthers on YouTube. So what I was going to say is, I had to you just have to figure that out. There's no book you can go to, hey, how does the sun rise and set on a flat earth? I mean, there might be one somewhere, but it's not like readily available like on every science channel and every science book, and that, it's like 1,000,000 to 1 resources for them to regurgitate their nonsense if he's accusing us of regurgitating. No, we don't regurgitate. Other flat earthers, we've got the truth, if something is true, then yeah, we'll regurgitate the truth because that's our agenda. So you guys have an agenda other than the truth. You guys have some kind of space fantasy, and you want that to be true. Also you guys, you shills get paid for this, or you have some interest in this. So anyway, let's go on. So no, we don't jump to a conclusion like this when there are so many perspective illusions at work in this photo. Okay, and let me just say real quick. He'll say, no, it doesn't look like this at all. See, let's say these railroad tracks are parallel to each other, parallel to the ground. This one's like maybe 10 feet above this one. So what I'm showing is when you're at the top of the mountain, this is that triangular shadow. And the triangular shadow, I read somewhere that it goes for a couple 100 miles. Depends how high you are above the shadow, of course. See, when you're on the ground, your eyes are 6 feet above, so it has a totally different angle and how far you can see. But on the mountaintop you can see far, so this goes a couple 100 miles. And it doesn't matter what shape the mountain is. The mountain could be a square top, total flat top, and it'll still still taper to a point, same as these railroad tracks. Think of each one of these rungs as a flat top, is a flat, and it keeps going out and would eventually taper to a point. Okay, so this is exactly what you see looking from the mountain. This is the shadow assuming, of course, they're parallel lines, and from a 93 million mile away sun, they should be parallel. Absolutely parallel. Okay, but they're going to make the case that it's a close sun. Hilariously, they don't even get that they're doing this. All right, and then let me say, well, okay, the top one's not quite the same because this isn't tapering to a point. And the reason these guys can't think for themselves, the mountain is maybe 40, 50, 60 miles from the observer here, and I believe the camera's zoomed in. But move the mountain a couple hundred miles away, and this shadow will most definitely taper to a point. All right? And will look like this. That's all that is. This is a perspective illusion. And these guys totally do not get that. Get what it is. Now, if there was a shadow involved here, this is the angle right here. This is the point of view. And I think we should start using point of view, or I'll use it once in a while with these guys because they don't understand perspective, and they call it flirspective because they really have dyscalculia, which means they have a spatial relationship problem. They don't understand how things relate spatially. And so here's the best view to see the shadow. It's right there at the source. That it would be stupid and it would be fallacious to jump to that conclusion, Bob. All right, let's see what else Bob has to say.
Okay, the final update is this short video by my friend Sean Hawkins.
Hello, everybody.
Sean did do a short video showing that the shadow shape will tell you whether or not the mountain is above or below the clouds, and whether the sun is coming from above or below the peak of the mountain. So let's go ahead and have a quick look at that.
Okay, and that's the end of part one. I hope you enjoyed that. Like I said, his video was 20 minutes, and my response to it was about an hour and a half. And since I had so much stuff that I thought was so good, I didn't want to leave it out. I just went ahead and left it at an hour and a half, and I'll put the other two up shortly because I have them almost completely done anyway. And come on back and look for it. It'll probably be within a week. All right. And that's about it for now. Thank you so much. And don't forget to check out my store. Link in the description. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.